Ever think about, like, what it would actually feel like
Yeah.
to have death, just kind of tap you on the shoulder?
Yeah, I can't say that's exactly been keeping me up at night.
Right. But that's exactly what we're getting into today. With Sebastian Junger's In My Time of Dying. Intense stuff.
Definitely intense. Junger doesn't hold back.
You might know him from The Perfect Storm, but this book, this is different. This is personal. It's his story.
And he goes deep, really goes deep, into his own medical crisis.
But here's the thing. It's not just about, oh, I got sick. It goes way beyond that. It's about that line between, well, being alive and not.
The science of it, the mystery, Junger ties it all together using his own experience as the anchor.
Exactly. And he doesn't sugarcoat anything. It's raw. So June 16th, 2020. Ordinary day, right?
As ordinary as any other, I suppose.
Junger's at his cabin, clearing brush. Beautiful day.
Sounds kind of idyllic, actually.
Right. He even mentions to his wife, Barbara, how many more days like this do we get? Talk about foreshadowing.
Wow, and that sense of urgency. It's like he had some premonition.
And then, bam, it hits him, this excruciating pain. But he knows instinctively it's not your average pain.
As someone who's witnessed trauma, he just knew. It's chilling, Makes you think about those subtle signs we miss.
Absolutely. So they call the paramedics. You'd think, okay, cavalry's coming.
Yeah.
But even that part of the story, it takes this unexpected turn.
Oh, how so?
They misdiagnose him at first. It's dehydration. Dehydration. Can you imagine?
Wow. To talk about your body sending mixed signals. But Junger always pushing limits.
Right, always pushing limits. Turns out his body was masking the severity of what was happening. Like, he was trying to downplay this major internal crisis.
It's a phenomenon called masking. His heart rate stayed stable, hiding the fact that he was bleeding internally.
Which brings us to the science of it all. Hemorrhagic shock.
Heavy stuff.
Intense. What is actually happening inside your body during something like this? I mean, break it down.
So, hemorrhagic shock. It's what happens when your body loses a massive amount of blood, and it happens fast. And as that blood volume plummets, your body freaks out. It's like, emergency mode, keep the essentials running.
Fight or flight, but on a cellular level.
Exactly. Your heart, lungs, brain, they get priority. And the rest, well, the body kind of diverts resources.
Junger talks about having tunnel vision during the ambulance ride. Later, he finds out that's a classic symptom.
Makes sense. Blood's being directed to the core, the vital organs, extremities, not so much. Hence the tunnel vision. It's a survival mechanism.
And as if things couldn't get worse, during this already insane ambulance ride, he loses control of his bowels.
Oh, God.
It's like his body is just giving up. It's a race against time, literally a fight for his life.
And the way he describes it, this realization that his body is just failing. It's raw, honest. Makes you think about your own mortality,
That moment where everything else just fades away and it's just you and that reality.
Exactly.
So they get to the hospital and it's all very intense.
Trauma bay, I imagine.
Total chaos. Junger describes it perfectly. The jargon, the frantic energy, they're throwing around terms, talking about a ruptured aorta, needing blood. And through it all, he's in and out of consciousness.
Wow.
It's at this point in the book where he takes us beyond just his experience and he starts to explain this medical phenomenon called, get this, the trauma triad of death.
Okay, now that sounds serious.
Right. So trauma triad of death, break it down. What's actually going on inside the body?
Well, picture it like this cascade of failing systems. You've got acidosis, which is basically your blood becoming too acidic because your body's struggling to get enough oxygen where it needs to go.
Okay, so far so bad.
Right. Then there's coagulopathy. That's a fancy way of saying your blood's ability to clot gets all messed up, so the bleeding gets even worse.
Oh, man.
And if that wasn't enough, you've got hypothermia. Your core temperature just plummets. And the craziest part is each of these things makes the others worse. It's this vicious cycle.
It's like your body's almost working against itself in a way. Trying to survive,
but backfiring. And what's interesting here is that this understanding of the trauma triad of death is relatively new, even for doctors.
Really?
Shows how much we're still learning about these intense situations.
It's pretty amazing he can even remember all of this. Even in his state, he's describing this feeling of being on the edge of a void, like he's being pulled towards this darkness.
I mean, can you imagine?
And then he has this vision. His dad appears to him. This is where we really start to dive into some deeper questions. What do we even make of these kinds of experiences, these visions people have when they're close to death. Have you ever heard of anything like that, especially in a life or death situation?
You're talking about near-death experiences, NDEs.
Right, exactly. NDEs. It's wild. Right?
It's fascinating stuff. For centuries, people have been documenting these accounts, seeing light, encountering deceased loved ones, this overwhelming feeling of peace. And what's really interesting is how similar these stories are across different cultures and time periods.
Like there's some common thread that ties them all together.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is science is starting to take notice. You've got researchers like Dr. Sam Parnian and Dr. Bruce Grayson. They've dedicated their careers to studying NDEs, trying to find neurological explanations. They're even exploring the idea that consciousness, what we think of as us, might be way more than just our brain.
So we've got this medical mystery going on, and then Junger throws us another curveball.
What's that?
Quantum mechanics. He starts talking about quantum mechanics. Like, maybe our universe operates in ways we don't even understand. I'll be honest, I was thinking, what does any of that have to do with him almost dying on an operating table?
It's a big leap.
Right, but he brings up this idea that maybe his vision, that feeling of being pulled toward darkness, could be explained by a completely different understanding of reality. Like maybe consciousness plays a much bigger role than we ever thought possible.
It's like his experience, as terrifying as it was, completely changed his perspective on everything.
And it makes you wonder, like, what if he's right? It really is mind-blowing. And Junger takes it even further. He dives into this theory called biocentrism, the work of a guy named Dr. Robert Lanza. Have you heard of this?
Vaguely. Yeah, it's like our consciousness is actually the foundation of reality.
That's it. Not just a side effect of our brains, but a fundamental force like gravity or something.
It's almost like saying instead of our brains creating consciousness, consciousness is creating our experience of the universe. Wild.
Right. And to be honest, part of me is like, okay, this is getting a little out there, even for me. But then again, we're talking about quantum physics, near-death experiences.
It kind of makes you question everything you thought you knew,
Totally. But, okay, back to Junger. He pulls through. He survives this crazy surgery, comes back from the brink. But it's not over.
Yeah, trauma doesn't just disappear.
Exactly. He's open about it. He's left with this fear, like death is always right there. He even feels guilty, like, why him? Why'd he survive?
Survivor's guilt. It's incredibly common after any kind of trauma, especially something this intense.
It's a lot to process.
Absolutely, and I think that's what Junger wants us to take away from his story. It's not just about his experience, it's about all of us. We're all part of this big, weird, mysterious universe.
And we're all going to face that moment, right? That tap on the shoulder.
We are, but the point is, life is precious, it's fragile, and we shouldn't take it for granted.
Junger's story, it's a lot to unpack, but it's also this really powerful reminder to appreciate every day, every moment, and to never stop asking those big questions.
Exactly. Who are we? What is this place? There's so much we don't know, but that's part of the beauty of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, folks, there you have it. Another deep dive into the mysteries of existence. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep living those big, beautiful lives.